Hi everyone, it's me Lana, and today I'm going to be showing you how we can put together our koi pond. So to start off for the supplies, what I like using for the water is this clear transparent liquid clay from Sculpey. You don't have to use that much of it to get the nice water effect, which I love. As I mentioned before in other videos, I don't like using resin for the water because I don't have the ventilation for it, but I also just never really liked using resin. The smell, the bubbles and the this and that, it was too confusing for me. If that's what you want to do, you can. But I like using the liquid clay because I don't have as many of those issues like the bubbles and all that occur. For the other items that will mix into the ponds, like we made last week, the fish, the lily pads, the lilies, anything else you made can go in it, and that way you can bake it all at once and just have it all ready to go. One thing at the end to make the water look shiny that I like to do, you could have the water not be shiny and just keep it the kind of matte or a satiny finish that the liquid clay gives after baking. I've done that before, and a lot of people have liked those ponds. I've liked them myself. But to give it a glossy, shiny finish, I like using this DuraClear gloss varnish. You can always mix in other liquid clays to the clear liquid Sculpey. If you want it to be just completely opaque, you could always use just a solid color liquid clay. You can mix in chalk or pan pastels, mica powders, glitter. You could use acrylic paint. I have done that in the past too. What I like using primarily are all the glitters. I have a lot of them and I've had them for years. So it's a nice way to use them finally, but it gives such a nice little sparkle to them too. What I usually like to use for the glitters anyway are fine glitters like these. This one is more of a, let me move you in so you can see it a little better. So now that I have you closer, now you'll be able to see more of hopefully the color. So this one is a pale one. I'm not sure where I got all of these. If I do remember, I'll list out where I got them, what the brand is, all that in the description. But this one is a kind of holographic pastel blue glitter. I like using that one in little bits. And then there's this one. It's a Martha Stewart glitter in turquoise. Now, I like the ones that are kind of translucent or holographic better than like the solid color ones because it gives more of a it kind of makes a light shine from different areas, almost like real water. So another kind I like using too, similar to the fine one being kind of translucent and like, not holographic, but iridescent, that's the word, is this one. It's a chunkier version of that kind of. But I mean, just looking at it in the bottle, you can kind of see why I like using it because it does look kind of like water. Last year, what I've really loved adding to a lot of my ponds that I make are these shards. I did get them off Etsy. So one kind of has like a green undertone, whereas this one looks more bluish. And I also have a white one. It's an iridescent color, if you can see, or kind of opalescent. And both of those, they said, are cellophane shards, like small pieces. It's just like it's pretty much the same as this chunky glitter. It's just not all the exact same shape. And I love using that because they're all different. Not every pond is gonna look the same anyway, but it gives it more of a uniqueness to it. Like I was mentioning before too, you could always use different mica powders. This one is a, don't mind the extra clay at the bottom. This one is more of a goldish pearl. Because I make so many ponds throughout a year, I did mix a lot of my other old glitters rather than get rid of them or anything like that. I mixed them all together, which is just, again, it's like the same kind of colors if you see past the fingerprints. Oh, let's see. See if I can show you this without it dumping everywhere. But isn't that pretty? Now with this mix, because there is so much of it, it does end up looking a lot more opaque. Not completely, but, and if you do want your water to be more opaque, you can always add, like I said, paint or other liquid clays in. I like doing that. I like using the translucent liquid Sculpeys along with the clear one. So like the translucent blue, the translucent purple, or mixing in those with a little bit of the pearl. Those look really nice together for water. So as for the other accessories beyond like what we made last week and beyond like the glitter for the water and the fish, can't forget those. What I like using to add little bits of detail along with everything are micro beads. Now these I just got recently. One thing I like doing too is whether it be the other glitters that we used at the beginning or other ones like say these, where one is like a greenish, this one's a blue. I like laying, it's more tedious, especially the bigger the pond is, but I like taking individual pieces of those glitters and laying them over top. So almost like how when you look at water in real life, like a beach or ocean, whatever, and you see it has all the sparkles throughout, but on the top, it almost looks like other pieces are sparkling individually. I love how that looks. So I try to add that. You obviously don't have to add all of these things or any of it, but it's just to show that you do have options. You don't just have to have it be plain if you use a liquid clay just because you're not using resin or something like that. You can add what you want. As long, I mean, obviously not everything is safe to put in the oven necessarily, especially if you use a same one for your food, but I've never experienced any issues with any of these items being mixed into the ponds. The last item that I like adding to, similar to the other beads, are just some clear ones. They're micro beads. None of the beads that I use have holes in them also, so if you're looking for them, that's what they are. No hole beads. Now granted, these are all different sizes. I don't use those giant ones for all of them, but the clear ones and the really iridescent ones can kind of mimic bubbles also, if that's something you'd be interested in having. Even though I talked about not wanting the resin to have bubbles, but it's one thing if you want them there, not when you hope they don't show up. All right, so let's get started. All right, so I got my apron on, and I'm just gonna move everything around, and I'm gonna pick out which ones I want for each pond. If you're ever like, oh, it needs more color, or oh, it's really thin with the amount of the liquid clay that you pour, you can always bake it and then put more in. If you wanted more glitter, more color, maybe if you added too much color the first time, you can always add a layer of the clear over top of that to kind of mellow out the color, and just bake that again. End up doing, especially for the bigger ponds and things like that. And also if you wanted extra stuff on top but didn't want to lay it down like I was saying you could do before you bake it, you can add it in another time that you do bake it. Move you down so you can see what I'm doing. So what I did end up doing since the last time that I showed you was, after baking the ponds, I did clean them down with like areas that had maybe fuzz and stuff like that. I cleaned those down a bit with some acetone on a Q-tip, cotton tip, whatever you want to call it, and just went over some of those areas. And it is safe that once it's dried, you can put it back in the oven and bake it, which I'll have to do too in order to cure the liquid clay. So I'll start with the little one. So I'm gonna move the items that I made specifically for the larger pond over. Take the liquid clay, I'm just gonna shake it a little. And don't worry too, if it's your first time using the clear liquid Sculpey, sometimes it does separate into a more of a thinner liquid part and a thicker liquid, and that's okay. You can still mix it. So if it doesn't mix fully, you know, if you let it sit long enough, sometimes it will still look like that. If you're noticing also that your fish kind of layer in this shell kind of end up looking kind of just falling into the water, it doesn't necessarily help you after the fact, but for future ones, if you have something really small, a fish like these, what you can always do is add a piece of maybe the color that you use for the base of the pond, or a translucent clay, or just something that you wouldn't really notice, and then place it just a real small amount and place it almost in a log shape underneath where you want it. So, and then add the fish on top of that, so it's almost like a little support stand for the fish. Be worried too with the liquid clay, how it just looks white. It's not going to bake white. If you're using the clear liquid clay, it's going to bake and it's going to turn into a translucent, transparent color. If you're worried about that, or if you're worried about how the color may look, what you can always do is take a little dot of it into a pan or on whatever you're using and mix in the colors you want to use, bake that, and then that way you can see kind of as a swatch, see how it'll look once it's all baked together. So I'm going to use the thinner, fine glitter, I mean. And because this is a clear liquid clay, a little does go a long way. Because you might not see it as much when it's like this before it's baked, but it does look a lot better, and it looks like a lot more once it has baked. So because of the amount of water, I think I will add the little piece of clay under them. Or I might just scoop out some of this water, actually. I'm gonna put it in this other one. And that's just so our little fish stand out. Now add some more glitters. One of the flowers on top of one, or kind of to the side of one, into the rocks. And I'm going to place this little one kind of beside one. And then I'll place the other just, and then I'll take a couple of these little beads. And like I said, these can kind of look like either other little flowers, maybe rocks in a kind of way, like little pebbles, or maybe shells even. It looked like however you think of it, obviously, but that's what I think anyway when I look at it. So I'm going to take some of this, the opal color. I'm just going to take a little on my hand, and then from high up, I'm just going to sprinkle it over top. And then this one is ready to be baked. But while I wait, before I bake it, I'm going to work on this one. I have this one. I'm going to add some of that, shake the liquid clay, and then I'm going to add some of it. Sometimes what I like to do for the larger ponds, rather than use so much of just the clear, liquid clay is you can kind of mix in some of that bacon bond, and that can also help with just holding some of those extra items in place, as well as being another clear additive for the water. I'm just gonna keep on adding till I see it reach all of the seams, or sides rather, the walls. I think that's pretty good. I'm just getting it in between those little bits, up to the wall, beside the plants, beside the rocks. Now, for something like this, if it's easier for you because of, and if you're worried about damaging any of the rocks or the little pieces of grass and stuff that we added, you can always, like I said, mix that water into a bowl, a cup, or something else. But I've done it so much that I feel comfortable mixing it while it's in the pond. So I'm gonna add some of those same colors that we did for the other pond. So the fine glitter, and then some of those thicker ones. Back when I first started, I would either mix color into the bacon bond at the time, or I would do paint, or kind of how you make a clay frosting. I would do that with blue colors, or when they first made the various like colors of liquid clay, more so like the pearl one. Oh, I remember adding that to almost all of them because it was so fun seeing how sparkly it was. So I kind of mix in either clay or paint or whatever, similar idea to how I do it now, into that pearl color, and then make the water from that. But it's fun with all the different kind of materials that they sell now, especially Sculpey. I really love their brand and how many different products they've made over the years and how different they all are. So I have that now. I know where my fish is gonna go, so I'm gonna place it in. Thankfully, with this one is so large, it won't sink to the bottom. If you prefer to have the water go over the fish, you can always do that. Just add more of the liquid clay before you add them, or you could add the fish first. It's up to you. You could always, if you wanted to add the water over them, what you could always do, if you wanted the color of the water to be more seen, but not kind of cancel out the way the fish looks, what you could always do is fill half of it with the liquid clay in all the colors that you want, bake that, then add the fish over top of that, and a layer of just the clear, or mostly just clear, liquid clay over top of it, so it'll cover the fish. Do that because I just think it looks really cute seeing them kind of poking out in the water like that. I know in real ones they don't do that, but I'm just saying, I think it looks cute. So I'm gonna start adding our little accessories. And again, like I said, they do tend to float to the bottom, so keep that in mind when you're adding stuff. I'm not adding them in any sort of pattern really. Keep that one there. I think I'm gonna use the orange ones. I wasn't necessarily going to before, but I really do like how they look. And I think they go well with the colors on the fish, like especially where we use that corally color. And you don't, obviously, like I said, don't have to add all of the flowers at once, but that's up to you if you want to. So on this one, I'm gonna add some of these little blue flakes of glitter, just like we did on the other one. Colors of the flowers, and kind of make it look almost like petals of those flowers kind of floating around. I like adding these little light colors over top because it does make it really kind of pop against all the blue that's in them. Because I usually add these even if I don't add the flowers. These available as if you had taken the colors that you used for those flowers, and if you bake, say, little pieces of it into like little flattened kind of teardrop shapes, or like a ball shape, but flattened, so it does look like a petal, and then you can just lay those on top near the flowers too. I'm gonna add some of those little beads to this one as well. I think that's about it. I'm gonna go ahead and bake these, and I'll be back to show you how it looks. Okay, so I'm back. These are all set. They just finished cooling from out in the oven. And I'm really happy with how they turned out. I did want to show you, before I show you how I glazed them, some other ones that I recently made that I baked along with these, which are different little, some of my shell ponds. That's one. This is another one that I still have to paint the some more of the color onto the fish. And then this. So like I said, you can really see how different they all are. Now they kind of look the same, or similar rather, just in the fact that I use similar colors, but you can see the difference of like how these ones have maybe a little bit more purple versus these. This one has a bit more of the pan pastel mixed in, so the water was a little bit more opaque in some areas. But overall, I'm really happy with how those turned out, along with the main ponds that I've been showing you. Close how that looks. One. I'm really happy with how this big pond turned out, and I think I don't normally keep a lot of the stuff I make, but I think I'm gonna keep this one because I'm really happy with how it turned out, with all the little inclusions and just how cute the little face is. I don't know if you can see that. I'm gonna back you up a little bit, and I'll show you how I glaze these. I use the DuraClear gloss varnish. This is an air dry varnish. It doesn't have an odor. That's why I like using it, because I do have a dog, and again, like I mentioned before, I don't have that great ventilation for something that has a stronger smell. You could pour this into something and use a brush. I normally would do that if it's a larger piece, or maybe a freestanding piece and it's not meant to necessarily look like water or cover every part of it. But because I am gonna want all of these shiny, what I do is just pour some in to what I'm working with, like that. And then using one of my tools, I just kind of spread it around to everything that I want to be shiny. Change this from that kind of satiny texture that the liquid clay has to something more glossy, but it kind of brings out some of the extra colors and details that we put into the water and the accessories in it, because it kind of makes it look more clear, similar again in a way that resin normally would do, but since I'm not doing resin. So sometimes it can be a little hard to grab at these little areas with the varnish. If you're using just like a needle tool or something like this, you don't have to use just whatever tool you have. You can, like I said, use a brush. I just don't really feel the need to a lot of the times, because also it's easier to clean up once I'm done, to clean up like a tool like this versus cleaning out the bristles of a brush. Something I really can't stand. If you're not happy with how much glitter there is, or if there's not enough color, you can either rebake it in another layer of the liquid clay, or you can mix it with whatever varnish you're using and lay it over top, so while it dries down, it dries along with that. Time for the big pond. I am gonna glaze the fish, just so it's up onto the fish and around one. I have tried the matte DuraClear varnish, and for me it's not so much a matte finish, it's more honestly kind of lip glossy or kind of satin gloss kind of finish, so I don't use that much. If I do a painting or just need like a coat or something, I'm not doing something like this, I'll use it, but other than that, I don't really like using it because it's not matte, at least in the one that I tried. All right, so now I got that all covered in the varnish. I'm gonna go let that dry, and I'll be back when it's all done. So it's the next day, and the varnish on the pawns is finally dry, so I can show you how they look. I'm so happy with how this one turned out. I think if I do it again, I might add some more smaller pebbles along the edge. I usually just don't, so that way, I don't know. I just like how it looks like this, but I love how you can see all the little colors, especially in the flowers. And you can see the sparkle in it. Certain ways it hits the light, especially in this area near its head. Like I said, I really enjoy using that varnish because you don't need a ton of coats to make it look really glossy or anything. I know some you might need a few coats, or like I mentioned before, one of the varnishes I tried in the past, you kind of needed to do like glossy, then a matte coat, then another glossy coat, or vice versa if you wanted it matte. And just one, it didn't make sense, but if you use like with that kind that I'm talking about, that not the DuraClear one, if you had done just what kind you wanted. So if there was a painting I had made a few years ago that somebody bought, and I remember having like a breakdown over it, and because I thought, well, that don't make sense to put, you know, each layer of every kind on it, but I had tried doing 2 layers of the matte varnish, and it started turning white. I was so upset, but like I said, I haven't thankfully had that issue with any of the DuraClear ones, whether it is the glossy or the matte one. The matte one, like I said, at least in my opinion, doesn't really dry down to matte. It would kind of have the finish of the liquid clay, how that is, how it's like slightly kind of shiny, but it's a little glossier than that. So if you didn't want it like super shiny like these ones are, you could always try that, or try a different one altogether. I hope you had as much fun as I did making these little koi ponds. And if you made your own, feel free to tag me on Instagram or by messaging me, or just let me know in the comments that you made one. I'd be so happy to hear if you did. All right, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Take care. Bye.